Welcome to Inside India. I'm Sri Jegarajah. Here are your headlines. India striking multiple targets in Pakistan. Islamabad calling it a blatant act of war in the worst eruption of tensions between the two nuclear-armed nations in more than 2 decades. Qatar Airways temporarily suspends some flights to Pakistan as Pakistan temporarily closes its airspace. On the trade front, India securing a major deal with the United Kingdom, galvanised by Trump's tariff war after 3 years of talks. And China cutting its RRR and key lending rates to support the economy and ensure financial stability amid the trade war with the United States. Indian markets join us in about 45 minutes' time, and the markets are going to have to struggle and price in these renewed Indo-Pak tensions. Here's what GIFT Nifty futures are indicating for the broader market. We've also seen the Indian rupee decline somewhat. GIFT Nifty futures are shaping up like this: 24,350. So we're looking at a somewhat flat to cautious, possibly a negative open today for the benchmark Nifty 50. Closed off yesterday at 24,379. As I said, we have seen some weakening in the Indian rupee given these renewed tensions. Dollar rupee exchange rate at 84.7080. So the rupee down by about 50 basis points against the US dollar. Our top story today: India says it striked 9 targets across the border in Pakistan. New Delhi saying its strikes hit 9 sites of terrorist infrastructure in the part of Kashmir administered by Pakistan and other territories. India also claiming no Pakistani military facilities were targeted. Explosions were heard on the Indian side of Kashmir coming from across the border. In the meantime, Pakistan is saying that the strikes hit civilians and that the country will respond to Indian aggression. Let's bring in CNBC TV 18's Parikshit Luthra, who has been following the developments in New Delhi. Parikshit, the next 48 hours are going to be crucial for India and Pakistan. In terms of India's stance, how much do you think we're going to learn from the External Affairs Ministry when it holds its press conference in about 1.5 hours' time? And is this going to be a message of open to dialogue, or is this going to be a message of follow-up strikes?
The Indian government statement which has come out, in fact, our embassy, the Indian embassy in Washington has put out a statement on the strikes that have been carried out. And one paragraph there was extremely important, that India's strike was non-escalatory in nature. It was targeted not at civilians, not at economic installations, but only terror camps. We did not even target army installations. We made it very focused that our target was terror camps operating in Pakistan, and that's why very precision strikes have been carried out by the Army, Air Force on 9 targets. These were precision munitions that were used to strike ground targets, and we've been told that India's intention was not, and we have not targeted any vital installation or army installation in Pakistan. So the tone and tenor of India's messaging seems to be that we've exercised restraint. You've tested our patience all through the last few weeks. We've acted in a very responsible manner, and as we have done in the past, we have made sure that our response is targeted only at terror groups operating from Pakistan and not at civilians. In fact, there have been ceasefire violations by Pakistan overnight, heavy artillery firing at the LOC, line of control, and the international border, as it is called. 3 Indian civilians have been killed in those attacks. So my sense is that the Ministry of External Affairs and the Army, Air Force and Navy, when they jointly briefed the media today, their comments also will be very restrained and measured, and they will go on to say that yes, India has acted in a restrained and responsible manner. In case now there is an escalation by Pakistan, we are ready for any eventuality. The reason why I say this, because as we speak, nationwide mock drills, wartime mock drills are going to be conducted, where civilians for the first time since the 1971 war will be trained, will be sensitized into what needs to be done when there is, for example, an air raid siren that goes off, or an evacuation that needs to take place, or there is a hostile attack. So there are 244 districts in India where those mock drills will be conducted. First time we're doing it in almost 5 decades. We haven't even seen those operations during the Kargil war. So all this is very significant. India clearly feeling that in case there is an escalation, there could also be a full-blown conflict, and we are ready for any eventuality.
Parikshit, that said, India and Pakistan are no stranger to these cross-border flare-ups. Is it any different this time? And what are the signs that the people in the national capital, where you are preparing for a sustained escalation, are preparing for the worst-case scenario?
You know, in the past, there have always been terror strikes against India. But this time, what has happened, it happened in a very, I would say, in a very ghastly manner, where you had terrorists walking into a tourist spot in Pahalgam, asking people about their faith and identity, and then shooting them down. So this has really shocked India. There is a lot of anger with that as well. And what's different this time is also the fact that we have suspended cooperation on the Indus Waters Treaty. We've gone ahead and we've started flushing of dams along the border to slow down the flow of water to Pakistan. We've suspended trade, all cargo services, shipping services with Pakistan altogether. So all of this is being treated as an act of war by Pakistan. And yes, we are seeing extensive advisories being sent to schools, to different police forces to carry out these civil defense drills across the country. Let's see how that happens. We haven't seen that for a very long time.
Parikshit, thank you very much indeed for that update. Parikshit Luthra from New Delhi. Let's get the perspective from Pakistan across the border. And Pakistan's Information Minister Atullah Tara joins us now from Islamabad. Sir, thank you very much indeed for joining me. You heard our correspondent there who said that India has acted in a restrained and responsible manner. How would you respond to that?
I think that's a very absurd way of putting the current situation, because India has violated the territorial sovereignty of Pakistan. They've attacked our civilian population, and they've targeted our innocent women and children and two of our mosques. I took international journalists and local journalists to the line of control a couple of days back, and I showed them one of the places that India alleges is a hideout for terrorists. And I proved my point that there are no hideouts, no training camps. And today, out of the 5 places that have been targeted, we were supposed to go to 2 places, in Muridke and Bahawalpur, along with international media and along with local media. But India, in the dead of the night, attacked our civilian population, which is totally unjustified. And you see, with regard to the Pahalgam incident, we had offered a transparent and fair investigation. And we wanted that some neutral countries or some neutral fora to participate in that investigation, because we're the frontline state against terrorism. We've laid down 90,000 lives against the war in the war on terror. And we stand as a wall between the terrorists and the rest of the world. We continue to give these sacrifices. On the other hand, India has been involved in transnational regression. The killing of Sikhs in Canada, in US, in Australia. We captured one of their spies, a naval commissioned officer, Kulbhushan Yadav, in 2016, who was involved in terrorist activities in Pakistan. There continues to be a nexus between the Indian intelligence agencies and terrorists in Balochistan province, in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa province. So you see, we are not the aggressors. We have been talking about an investigation. India has fled from the investigation. And after the Pahalgam incident, you saw that zipline video. There was no indiscriminate fire. People were not separated and killed. And after that, the FIR, the first information report by the Pahalgam police, was registered within 10 minutes of the incident. Yes. Whereas police reached the scene after 1 hour 30 minutes. So India has no evidence against Pakistan, and they've unjustifiably attacked Pakistan, to which we've responded. We've shot down 5 of their planes.
Minister, you have said categorically that this constitutes an act of war. How then does Pakistan intend to respond and retaliate?
Our response is ongoing. because our civilians, innocent civilians, women and children, our mosques were attacked without any evidence. We have shot down 5 Indian planes and 1 Indian drone in their own territory. Indian media has now accepted that. We've also destroyed many of their posts along the line of control in Kashmir. So I think we've given a very befitting response. Our Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif has called the National Security Committee meeting, the highest forum for security matters, in 1 hour 30 minutes. So we'll probably be issuing a declaration from there. But our response is ongoing. We have shot down their fighter planes in their own territory. We've not targeted. You see, there are certain code of ethics in war. We've not targeted any civilians. We've just shot down fighter planes, 1 drone, and we've targeted their military posts across the line of control.
Minister, what do you make of claims from India that Pakistan and Pakistan's troops have violated the ceasefire across the line of control?
You see, we've retaliated across the line of control and we've targeted their posts in our right to self-defense. We never wanted this aggression, but we said that our desire for peace should not be mistaken for our weakness. And India, by attacking, India is the aggressor, India is the provocator. They violated the territorial integrity of Pakistan. They've targeted our civilians. So we had a right to respond, and we responded befittingly so that India knows that Pakistan has the right to self-defense and Pakistan will defend people and its territory.
Minister, you mentioned an investigation that Pakistan was willing to conduct into the attacks in Pahalgam. What are your findings so far, and where does the finger of blame point to then? Who do you believe was responsible for these attacks?
You see, Pahalgam is a good 200 kilometers away from the Pakistani line of control. And when we say we want an investigation, because no group has claimed any responsibility, India has failed to arrest these terrorists. The 900,000 military personnel in Indian illegally occupied Kashmir, who are there to usurp the rights of the Muslims of Kashmir, to torture and subjugate the Muslims of Kashmir. The Pahalgam incident is a security and intelligence failure of the Indian forces. And to hide their incompetence, they blame Pakistan. They came up with absurd sketches of the attackers without saying where these attackers were from, because in order to get to Pahalgam, India has so many checkposts in Indian illegally occupied Kashmir. So why couldn't they stop these attackers? Why couldn't they be traced? Why couldn't they be captured? There's a military base right next to Pahalgam. So I think India has used this incident to its advantage to go into war hysteria against Pakistan. Pakistan wants peace. Pakistan has always wanted peace. And we've done self-defense. India, being the aggressor, has ran away.
Can you state categorically, Minister, that the perpetrators of the Pahalgam attack had no connections to Pakistan, were granted no safe harbor in Pakistan, were not operating from Pakistan?
The perpetrators, because see, we expressed our concern over the Pahalgam incident. We expressed our sympathy with the victims. Pakistan, I categorically deny that Pakistan had anything to do with it, even remotely. Pakistan has nothing to do with the Pahalgam incident. And a few months back, we had one of the biggest hijacking incidents of terrorism, the Jafar Express. Did India even have the courtesy to express concern, let alone condemn that incident? We had terrorists appearing on Indian television from the Baloch Liberation Army. We had footages from the mobile phones of terrorists being aired on Indian television. We suffered terrorism incidents every other week, which are relatable to Indian intelligence. And our hands are clean. We have nothing to do with this incident. We have nothing to do with the terrorists. And we have no hideouts, no training camps. And as a gesture to show the world that we have nothing to do with it, I even took media to these places. And we were supposed to go today. But India, unfortunately, resorted to violence. And we've replied to the same coin, giving a befitting reply in our self-defense. Thank you very much.
Minister, can you clarify exactly what the response has been so far from Pakistan? There are claims that Pakistan has shot down 5 Indian jet fighters when earlier you claimed that they did not cross into Pakistani airspace. Can you clarify exactly what is going on in terms of your response?
Because they were headed towards Pakistani territory, our air defense missile system, it hit 5 of their planes in Aknur, in Ambala, in Pampur, in Barnala, and 1 drone. So we've shot down 5 planes and 1 drone, which was headed for Pakistan in our self-defense. And Indian media has accepted that their planes have been shot down. So this was our response because we are not the aggressors once again. We are not the provocators. We are acting in self-defense, and we have that right. And India's case has only weakened by this attack because first they failed to provide evidence in Pahalgam, and now they attack Pakistan without any justifiable cause. So I think India has a lot to answer for.
What is the fate of the pilots in those planes? Have they been captured? Are they prisoners of war?
No, because these planes crashed after we attacked them in Indian territory. We've received reports that one of them is in hospital, he ejected. The fate of the rest will be released by Indian media, I believe. So the fate of the rest is unknown till now. We await further details because this is an ongoing development, and I thank you. Very kind.
Minister, is there any scope for dialogue? Is Pakistan willing to start a process, willing to start a diplomatic off-ramp to this?
I think India will have to take a step back because they've attacked Pakistan. They've failed to provide evidence to Pahalgam. So they will have to step back and they will have to prove to the world that they have some evidence regarding Pahalgam, which they don't. We offered an investigation. They did not agree to that. And they attacked us. So I think it's for India to take a step back for any such development to take place.
Minister, I'm very grateful for your time today. I've been speaking to Ather Energy, Pakistan's Information and Broadcasting Minister. In the meantime, we are seeing many flight diversions and cancellations. Our travel editor, Monica Petrelli, has the latest on that front. And Monica, it's very clear that European and the Gulf carriers are acting out of an abundance of caution.
That's right, Sri. That's exactly what many are saying. But we saw earlier this week a number quietly starting to avoid Pakistan's airspace, even though they were not required to. However, now, with military escalations happening overnight, we see airlines remaining quiet no more. Now we're seeing Korean Air, as well as Taiwan's EVA Air, saying that they too will be avoiding Pakistan's airspace. Qatar saying all flights into and out of Pakistan will be canceled, temporarily at least. And also airlines within India, Air India, saying it's canceling flights to some 9 different cities in India, most of those to the north. However, at least one of those cities down in the western state of Gujarat. Now, this is an area that's south of Pakistan's border, an area that many airlines have been utilizing to avoid Pakistan's airspace. We know it's also a state with multiple military bases within India. And so what we're seeing now, as of yesterday, we saw a number of airlines continuing to use Pakistan's airspace, but even those that have not made any announcements, today the skies above Pakistan virtually empty. In fact, in the few hours we've been monitoring this, only 3 have ventured in, 2 operated by Ethiopian Airlines, 1 by Cam Air, that's an airline out of Afghanistan, the rest avoiding the entire country, as well as the disputed area to the north, that is the area of Jammu and Kashmir, which both Pakistan and India claim territorial rights to. Also, though, an area of from 1 to 200 kilometers into India along the border with Pakistan also empty. The skies have no planes flying there. Everyone typically flying a longer route to go south. This is creating a virtual wall of flights across the Arabian Sea and up the Red Sea. Now an already busy corridor, even busier as more airlines seek the southern route around Pakistan. Back to you, Sri.
Monica, thank you for that. And those diversions and cancellations will have implications for what has been a very active GCC India economic corridor. Monica, thank you for that. Right, in the meantime, India has clinched a trade deal with the UK. This comes under the shadow of threats looming from Trump's tariffs in a deal that saw 3 years of negotiations. Tariffs on autos, whiskey and food were lowered. India and the UK aim to increase their trade by $34 billion by 2040. Prime Minister Modi called the deal ambitious and mutually beneficial.
It's a historic day for India. A little while ago, before I came here, I spoke to the Prime Minister of Britain, and I'm happy that the India-UK Free Trade Agreement has been finalised.
Let's bring in Abhijit Das now, author of Strategies in GATT and WTO negotiations. Abhijit, thank you for your time. Can we start with the security backdrop? And if India now has an escalating security crisis on its hands, if safeguarding national security is the priority, then do you feel that a US-India trade deal gets pushed back, or can we yet expect a deal by Diwali?
Thank you for having me on your show. Of course, trade and security always get interlinked. And given the security backdrop, I do expect that there could be a bit of pushback on India-US trade deal. But at the same time, there might also be an urgency to clinch this deal. And what we've seen in respect of India's deal with United Kingdom is that it is not only a deepening of economic ties, it also will create a pathway for deepening strategic ties as well.
Abhijit, do these renewed tensions, looked upon another way, mean that bilateral trade, a trade deal gets done with added urgency for the very virtue of the fact that defence in an inherent US-India trade deal is so central?
Absolutely. The trade deal will get an added urgency, added momentum, not only because of the security situation, but also because of the general sentiment of uncertainty, turbulence in global markets, in international trade. So all countries, and India is no exception, would try to clinch some of their ongoing FTA negotiations at the earliest rather than postponing it for a future date.
So does it amount to zero for zero tariffs? Is that ultimately what India and the United States is looking for? And how do production-linked incentives work into this? Is that going to be a core component of any bilateral deal, Abhijit, insofar as India will insist that the US invests in PLI schemes in India as part of a deal?
It's difficult to envisage what role PLI scheme will have in the India-US deal. The India-US deal is more likely to center around liberalizing of trades in goods and services. Of course, there could be some provisions around cooperation for encouraging US investments into India. But overall, the deal is likely to center more around services liberalization and merchandise trade. And if we go by previous trade deals, while investment could be a component, that really will be more about protection of investment interests, more about having a due process for resolving investor concerns.
Yes. Abhijit, so if there is a deal by Diwali, which will mean around mid to late October, then to what degree is that going to supercharge FDI inflows into India, and to what degree is it going to supercharge Apple moving into India and diversifying its supply chains there and building manufacturing, advanced manufacturing? Could Tesla also be encouraged to plant the flag? How much of a fillip do you think this is going to give to international investors?
We are already seeing Apple's having plans to start enhancing their manufacturing in India. So even without the deal, it's already happening. The deal might help persuade those who are fence-sitters, investors who are yet to make up their minds, to start investing in India, look at India more closely, and explore the possibility of manufacturing in India and also exporting from India. So yes, certainly a deal by fall of this year, maybe by September, October, could provide very important positive signals for investors from US, from other countries to start looking at India more closely.
Moving on to the UK-India trade deal that was struck on Tuesday, Abhijit. Britain said the deal was the biggest and most economically significant bilateral trade agreement since Brexit. Would you agree? And what are the implications then for trade flows into India and for the broader macroeconomic picture?
Of course, there is no doubt that this is one of the biggest deals which UK has struck after Brexit. In terms of the issues covered, it's really very comprehensive. It looks at trade in goods, services. There are certain aspects of intellectual property rights, government procurement, labor, environment, regulatory coherence. So you name it, it's there, even issues like anti-corruption. So this certainly is a very ambitious, very comprehensive deal. But let's bear in mind that the final fine print is still being ironed out by the two sides. And once we have the fine print in public domain, then only we will be able to make a more realistic assessment of the economic implications. But having said that, at a broader level, this deal signifies the commitment of the two countries to have a closer economic and strategic cooperation, strategic partnership. This will certainly open doors for enhanced bilateral trade. Of course, going by the projections by the UK government, by 2040, the bilateral trade between the two countries are likely to increase by about 25 billion pounds, with 15 billion pounds accruing to United Kingdom and about 10 billion pounds accruing to India. So
Yes.
overall, these gains may not appear very impressive, but
Yes.
what is relevant is signaling that in a turbulent environment, countries can come together and strike trade deals.
And arguably opens up the floodgates to ASEAN and the Middle East, especially after Prime Minister Modi's visit to Saudi Arabia. Abhijit, we'll have to leave it there, sir. Thank you very much indeed for those insights. Abhijit Das there, author of Strategies in GATT and WTO Negotiations. Thank you, sir. Rising geopolitical tensions could bring some risk to the Indian markets, and we'll talk about everything markets with the CEO of the National Stock Exchange of India. Ashish Kumar Chauhan joins us next after the break. Welcome back. Let's give you a glimpse of the landscape in the Asian markets. Broadly, it's looking positive with a few exceptions. The TAIEX and the Nikkei are flat at 20,506 and 36,804 respectively. Amid the trade war with the United States, China is pulling out all the stops to help its economy. The PBOC announced highly anticipated rate cuts today. Emily Tan has further details and joins us now. Emily.
Thanks a lot, Sri. And these are the first batch of measures since Trump's Liberation Day, and since we saw back in September when the first stimulus package was unveiled by the mainland authorities. So in the follow-through to that, the PBOC saying that the world economy is full of uncertainties, but it will resolutely safeguard China's financial stability. Now, with that, announcing a 50 basis point cut to the RRR, which will go into effect on May the 15th. This brings the average RRR, the reserve requirement ratio, to about 6.2%. This will release 1 trillion yuan of liquidity into the market, or about 139 billion US dollars. Also seeing an interest rate cut of 10 basis points. That leads to a LPR cut of 10 basis points as well. And we're looking at the financial regulator saying that they're going to be setting up a pilot scheme to allow insurance companies to invest in the stock market. They're going to be forcefully promoting long-term capital into the stock market and helping A-share listed companies that are affected by tariffs to cope with the difficulties. The CSRC going on to say that it's going to be supporting M&A, mergers and acquisitions, among listed companies. We got to the financial regulator taking further steps as well to stabilize the property market, guiding financial institutions to maintain steady financing to support the property market. So in addition to these measures that were announced, we can call it stimulus, we are looking at reaction in the market, which also got a nice lift on the now news that we have the Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent alongside USTR Greer to be meeting in Switzerland with the lead trade negotiator in China, that is Vice Premier He Lifeng. So that is helping to support the market, as well as we've seen a de-escalation between China and the United States. So we could see the more concrete talks set to take place at the weekend, Saturday and Sunday, over in Switzerland. Sri, it's back to you.
Emily, thank you very much indeed for that. Now, we are counting down to the market open in India, just under 15 minutes' time. Let's give you the futures picture once again. GIFT Nifty futures are projecting an opening number in the region of 24,376. So a little changed if that number does materialise compared to where we left off yesterday for the benchmark at 24,380 or thereabouts. We are seeing some weakness in the Indian rupee, given the Indo-Pak tensions. Dollar rupee rate at 84.63, so Indian rupee down by about 0.4%. Let's bring in Ashish Kumar now, Chauhan. He is the MD and CEO of the National Stock Exchange of India. Ashish Kumar, thank you very much, sir, for joining me. Your view, first of all, on these developing tensions between India and Pakistan and their impact specifically on sentiment and confidence on the Indian stock markets. How bad do you feel this situation could get?
In a way, I think we think it will be contained as of now. It has been what I call a fitting response by the Indian Armed Forces. And now we need to go back to our work. And that's what all of us are doing.
Absolutely, sir. And we witnessed these episodes before in India's history, and the markets and the macro have recovered and moved on. How resilient do you feel India's macro and markets narrative is right now?
In a way, Indian economy is slightly away from exporting the goods. Broadly, our exports are in services, especially to US. And that's where what are the current tariff-related activities, in a way, don't touch us as much as it would touch, say, China or any other ASEAN country. And that's where I think India is resilient. On top of that, India has its own growth momentum due to its high-tech nature of the economy and also the demographics, which is very young. So it's able to produce more on the higher side, but also consume more. And that's where there is an internal demand of things, which of course is partly met by the imports. But recently, India has also started exporting even iPhones and Samsung phones and many other things which are high-tech of nature. And also now even chip manufacturing companies are going to start production this year. So a lot of high-tech manufacturing is now moving away from China for a variety of reasons. And India seems to be finding a good ground in that area also. Overall, what has happened with UK yesterday in terms of the free trade agreement, if you would have seen President Trump's interactions on India about yesterday, saying that the free trade agreement seems to be very close. So if this too happens, already UK agreement has happened. And if US agreement happens, probably it would be first time in India's independent India's history that we would have in a way free trade agreement with two large Western nations. And that would give us a good fillip going forward over the next 10, 20, 30 years.
Indeed, sir. A question you must be getting a lot from stakeholders is the question about the IPO. And before we get into that, I want to play you some sound bites from SEBI Chairman Tuhin Kantapande, who was interviewed by my colleague Latna Venkatesh a couple of days ago. Here's what he had to say on the NSE's forthcoming public listing.
There are certain issues which are going back and forth. I think there have been active discussion
case which is
the
roadblock.
There is I think that is one case where I think some solutions can be found in terms of settlement, etc. And there is a technology architecture issue. Then there is a governance, and then is a clearing corporation. In these all of these things, I think there is an active interchange between the exchange and the SEBI, and we intend to look at positively forward to, not as a procrastinating device, but actually to make it happen.
Ashish Kumar, so there is an active exchange between SEBI and the NSE on ironing out, if you will, some of the regulatory challenges that needs to be cleared before NSE can list. Would you agree with that? And where then does that take the timeline, in your opinion, for an IPO?
The new SEBI chairman has been very, very nice and, of course, a very wise man. And so as and when we get the no objection certificate, that is basically as per the process, we have to get for our IPO. As a process, we need to have a no objection certificate to even prepare a DRHP, that is a prospectus. And once we get the no objection certificate from our sector regulator, which is itself SEBI, and then we will prepare our RHP and then we'll file it with them. Then they will take some time to go through and upgrade, update, ask questions. So it's probably after we get the NOC, we will have probably a few months to prepare our DRHP and then file it with SEBI. And after that, few more months for SEBI to be satisfied with our disclosures. And then only the IPO can happen. So it's a sort of a little away, provided we get the NOC soon.
If I could press you, sir, so does that take us to calendar year 2026, or could we see an IPO earlier than that?
It depends how fast we are able to move on both sides after the NOC is received. We are awaiting the NOC from SEBI in this regard.
I see. You just released your earnings numbers, and the issue is a fall in volumes and trading revenue, which was down by 14%. Do you think that is going to worsen from here, or could it stabilize in future quarters?
In a way, SEBI had a perception about over speculation in the markets over last several years, and they took very stringent measures to reduce the trading volumes in the derivatives market, which was giving us a lot of revenues. And that's where we have seen a large drop in our options volume specifically. And that's where you have seen some degrowth in terms of the overall revenues, which we observed last quarter. At the same time, in April, we have seen some green shoots because over the last 6 months, even Indian markets were not doing so well. And that's where some portion of the degrowth was due to the SEBI measures, but some portion of degrowth was also because market was not doing so well. Now that market has started doing well, we have seen some green shoots in the month of April and May. So it remains to be seen how it works out.
It's a very important point, Ashish Kumar. And yesterday we saw Ather Energy listing, the third biggest IPO in India so far this year. There has been something of a IPO drought. Do you think that the picture will change in FY26?
In a way, I think we sometimes in media we lurch from the parching to the drought kind of a situation. So last year, for information, more than 268 IPOs happened in calendar year 24, with the NSE being the largest IPO collector in the world at $19.6 billion for the equities IPO. And overall, we raised more than $208 billion for REITs, InvITs, commercial paper, debentures, and many other things. So effectively, India is a very vibrant capital markets with huge amount of growth. And that's where when you look at 268 IPOs vis-a-vis this year's probably 2030 in the first quarter, we may think it's a drought. But overall, for any country will give an arm and a leg for that kind of numbers on IPO. At the same time, India is a country on the move. It's growing very fast. And that's where I think we are going to see many more IPOs. Yesterday, as you said, Ather Energy's listing is an indication, and many more companies are in the pipeline.
And we'll be speaking to Tarun Mehta, co-founder and CEO of Ather Energy, later on in the programme. So that'll be an interesting conversation after Ather's IPO yesterday. Final question, Ashish Kumar, and let's return to the prospects for short-term volatility in the markets. Yesterday, Feroz Aziz of Anatharati told me that there will be volatility, relatively contained. You echoed that view. Even in the event of substantial escalation, Nifty 50 is unlikely to correct by more than 5 to 10%. Would you agree with that analysis?
Yeah, in a way, India has seen such incidents over last 78 years of its independence, and specifically in last 20, 30 years, many times. And it has been, in a way, not escalated due to variety of reasons, because India's response always has been measured and, in a way, proportionate. And that's where it has never gone beyond a particular numbers. But at the same time, today, India is growing very fast. India is actually having newer relationships with the West, which was never there before. So for me, I would be surprised even at a slight drop going forward because of the fact that the economic activity in India, and India is not a small country. It's not a country of, say, 5 million people or 10 million people. It's 1.4 billion people, and it's like a more than a continent-sized country, although on a map, it doesn't look like that because of the way the projections are made on a globe. But otherwise, it's a very large country. The activities in one small area doesn't affect the economic activities in 99.99% of the country. And it will continue to grow at faster than any other country in the world. And I think now, if you can see, the foreign investors are coming back. They've come back in April. Now you can see them coming back in May too. So I think a lot of confidence on India's ability to support the world going forward.
Ashish Kumar, we will leave it there, sir. Thank you very much indeed for joining me on Inside India. Ashish Kumar Chauhan there from the National Stock Exchange of India. Indian markets are just coming online. We will take a closer look at the market action after this break and talk to Ather Energy CEO and co-founder. The stock made its debut on the exchanges yesterday. We're back in 2 minutes. Welcome back. Indian markets are just joining the trading day, and the Nifty 50 really on the flat line at the early open at 24,360. And there really seem to be some countercurrents in these markets that investors have to contend with. On the one hand, we got the good news of a UK-India trade deal. On the other hand, we have these renewed tensions which are unfolding with regards to India and Pakistan, and the risk of a sustained escalation, risk of a sustained conflict. And with that, we are seeing some weakness in the Indian rupee, which is off by about 0.3% against the US dollar, 84.58. Let's take a closer look at shares of Yes Bank that surged yesterday on reports of Japan's SMBC buying a majority stake. But CNBC TV18's Latha Venkatesh found out that might not be the case. Let's head out now to Mumbai, where Latha can join us with more details. Hi, Latha.
Hi. Yes, this was the big news yesterday, or reports that Sumitomo Bank, or SMBC, has gotten RBI's nod. That's the big thing. For a year now, we know that there are talks between Sumitomo Bank and some of the shareholders of Yes Bank. But the report yesterday that they've got an RBI nod was the rumor, or the report we scotched. RBI sources close to RBI told us there is no application as well from the Sumitomo group. Now, why is the context is very important. Yes Bank, about 5 years ago in 2020, was staring at a run on the bank for various reasons, and the Reserve Bank prodded a group led by State Bank of India to infuse about 100 billion rupees and take 40% stake in that bank. Now the bank is nursed back to health, and it's very clear that at least State Bank clearly wants to sell because it owns 24%, and under the rules, you can't have two banking licenses. You can't have your own banking license and 24% stake in something else. So these talks have been going on. But there is another catch. The Reserve Bank doesn't allow any one owner to own more than 26% stake. But anyone who wants to come wants a 51% stake in the bank that they are buying, which is what even Sumitomo clearly wants. So the whole problem of the merchant banker and the Yes Bank shareholders is to convince the buyer that 26% is voting rights and 51% is stake is what you have to agree with. They have not succeeded so far. We will have to wait and see. Just as the last point, Sumitomo Bank is reportedly also in talks with another bank, HDFC Bank, to buy a stake in their NBFC, in their finance company. We have not confirmed that report.
Thank you very much indeed for that. I appreciate it. Now let's pivot to the IPO space. We were just talking about this. Ather Energy braving the global uncertainty to come to market. The Indian electric two-wheeler manufacturer, one of the first major listings in Mumbai this year. The stock performing like this now, down by 1.8%. That's after a downbeat first day. Let's bring in Taran Mehta now, co-founder and CEO of Ather Energy, joins us now. Taran, thank you very much indeed for your time. Shares fell at the debut. Why do you think that was? And what is it about the story, which is on the face of it a very, very positive one, given the size of the addressable EV market in India? What is it that investors perhaps missed here? Hi, Taran, can you hear me?
Sorry. Yeah. Hi, thanks. So
Sure.
I think the overall India electric and two-wheeler stories landed incredibly well. When we were on the roadshow, what we realized is that the overall consumer story and the fact that India two-wheelers are going electric, especially given the size of our market, is an incredibly strong story. Even as we launched the IPO, actually the reception, I would say, has been fantastic. Institutional part and even retail part in this market got subscribed incredibly well, with some really strong mutual funds and FIIs making a comeback in the IPO market. So I would say it's landed incredibly well. Obviously, one can't predict and dive too deep into daily stock movement, especially given the current macro. But I would say the investor interest has been very, very encouraging.
Taran, given how your closest rival, Ola Electric, underwhelmed post-listing, did you feel, with the benefit of hindsight, that at a 321 rupee issue price, that was maybe too aggressively priced, given the market conditions?
Right. No, so if you look at our market cap, we believe we have priced our issue fairly with all the advice of the banks. Particularly, our story is actually quite different. Ather has its entire bet on the premiumization story of India. That's where our products are squarely positioned, all products priced above 100,000 rupees. Our bet is incredibly strongly on the software. So that is a very large part of, that's a very profitable product for us. Ather is one of those few automakers which is actually able to sell software separately on top of the vehicle, which is a very, very high margin business. And we also have a very solid ecosystem play. Overall, as a brand for the consumer, we have a very different positioning. It's one that it's that of quality and very strong, well-designed products here in India. So I think this overall more premium, more quality, more consumer-focused story of Ather is a different one. And I think the market will see it that way.
So you're playing a margin game as opposed to a volume game, Taran. Is that the way to see it? And if so, then are you on the... Give us a sense of when you will get to a sustainable path of profitability.
And I like the line that you use, but just to counter that, Ather today is the market leader in all of South India, with the market share between 20-25% in most months. In fact, even in Western markets like Gujarat, Ather has grown almost 3-4 times and is today hovering around 20-25% market share. Our journey and our growth is coming on account of expansion into the northern part of the country. Ather is incredibly strong in South and now becoming very strong in West. It's an expansion into the northern markets for which we have recently launched a series of products and for which we are gearing our next year's launch of products that are really targeting. As we expand there, I believe our overall pan-India market share, which is hovering around 14-15%, can trend much higher. And that will reflect in our volumes in the recent quarters. Our 3-quarter data of FY25 will show we grew 45% in volumes. On margins, and yes, as you called out, obviously we've got a very strong focus there. Our margins have already doubled last year from 9% to 19%. And this is happening on the back of very, very, very limited support from government subsidies. There's no production-linked incentives in these margins, and overall federal subsidies, national subsidies are just a few percentage points of revenue. So very strong control on margins, very strong trajectory of growth of volume overall. And as we expand our distribution this year across the country, and remember, India is a very large country. We have something like under 300 stores right now, but India is a market where you can have thousands of stores and you will still probably not cover the entire country. So as we start pushing pan-India with our dealership and franchisee model, which is CapEx light, I believe the growth in the coming years can be quite fantastic. So you put that growth and you put the strong unit economics and the overall focus on that together. And I think our losses, which have been coming down in the recent quarters and months and recent quarters and years, will continue to trend very positively. And the journey towards profitability should be hopefully a short one.
Taran, the market seems to feel that this is an incredibly and an intensifying competitive environment that you are playing in. What do you make of that? And who do you see as your closest and fiercest rivals? And how do you aim to get the edge?
You know, and you're right. We are building auto globally is never an easy game, and differentiation does not come easy. We knew this right from day one. We are going to do a good job, maybe a great job on distribution, manufacturing, quality, all those narratives. But the reality is those are things which our competition's been doing for decades. Our strength and our differentiation comes from our product, comes from our technology and our investments in R&D and the vertical integration behind it. That's a place Ather is truly differentiating itself. That's the reason Ather is able to sell software when almost none of our peers are really very successful with it. That's the reason Ather has possibly the best premium play in a market where phenomenal legacy incumbents exist. Overall, our market has been consolidating for the last few years. In fact, arguably right now, the electric two-wheeler market is even more consolidated than the petrol two-wheeler market. And I think the players that are in now and who've taken market share are once set to grow. I see our top competition as players like TVS, Bajaj, maybe in the future Honda. These are solid.
We've got to leave it there, sir. Thank you very much indeed for joining me.